Okay, so today I want to talk to you about how to use astrology and using the knowledge of the planets for psychological self healing. So, you can use astrology for all kinds of different things, and specifically what I'm talking about is Vedic astrology. There is some differences. I prefer Vedic astrology, and I won't get into why, but for me, it's far more accurate. And there's a lot more tools that I can use as opposed to Western astrology. You can have whatever opinion you want, but generally speaking, the idea of using astrology for psychological self healing for me is a much deeper concept than just using astrology to, predict when you should get a job and when you're going to find a life partner and, what your personality is and all that kind of stuff. And, nothing wrong with any of that. I like to use astrology for things that I can use to change my life whenever. I want to look for these deeper principles that don't change. So the idea is that there's two extreme ways to experience life in this universe, and one is to see yourself separately from everything else, and so to see things outside of you. In this case, the planets are outside of you, and the planets are forces that act upon you. So that's one way to look at it, that you are small and the rest of the universe is big and it's acting on you. The other extreme is to look at it as you are everything, and everything outside of you is merely a reflection of what is in you, including the planets. So in Vedic astrology, the planets represent all kinds of different things. They can, of course, represent the actual energy of the planets themselves, but they can represent deities. And so there are deities associated with each of the planets. And so, this is important to know, by the way, about mantra. Chanting mantras, every mantra has associations with planets. So people who just bounce around from doing one mantra to the other, and even spiritual teachers, even, Indian gurus who throw around mantras, if they don't understand the association with the planets, you have no idea what the effect is going to be. Because, what's going to work for me is going to be different than what works for you. So if for instance, I need to chant to a Mars deity in order to, get the best out of my chart, that's not going to work for you if Mars is working in a negative way. And then you have to know which deity, which Mars deity you need to work with, because that will be seen in your chart as well. And so if we both need to be working with Mars, but if, I'm a Leo and, you're a Taurus, then there's a good chance that the Mars deity that works for me is not going to be the one that works for you. And that's a whole science in and of itself. You can go to courses.thunderwizard.com and look for the astrology, and you can learn about that. By the way, before we go any further, neo.thunderwizard.com, check that link out, the 4 tools you need in order to understand how to interact with the universe and master it. Courses.thunderwizard.com, all of my books, all of my DVDs, all of my video teachings, and all of my services, including Vedic astrology. You can go to that, or you can just go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. Please subscribe and hit the bell button. While I'm at it, I want to say thank you to my producer. Her name is Grace Chandler, and her website here is www.gracechandler.com. And she has subscribed at one of the higher levels on the Patreon page, which is thunderwizard.com. And if you want to support the channel and have me showcase you as a producer, you can go there and figure out. Just go there and take a look at what subscription works best for you, and there's all kinds of goodies there for you if you want it. But today we're going to be talking about astrology. So while I'm doing it, I should put up the astrology link, which is right there, astrology.thunderwizard.com. So we're talking about the planets and how to use them for psychological self-healing. So, as I said, there's two ways to look at the universe. One is to see the universe as you're tiny and the universe is big, and all of these things are influencing you, which is the way most people experience life. The other way is the spiritual understanding that everything outside of you, including the planets, including the gods, are merely a reflection of your own internal experience. And so I want to look at the planets as factors of the psyche. And I'm a polytheist, which means that I worship multiple deities, that I see the universe as being populated by multiple deities. And using the word shaman, a shaman is somebody who seeks balance between the physical and the spiritual. And so I see the universe as being filled with a bunch of different influences that are opposing each other and working together in a dynamic balance. So astrology is that as well. The planets are in a dynamic balance with each other. The deities are forces in the universe that are in a dynamic balance, but they are all aspects of me. And so a lot of people, especially people who have come from a born again or a Abrahamic monotheist background, even just your basic Westerner, because even though they're not religious, they've been programmed to think of the universe this way. When I talk about worshiping planets or worshiping deities, people want to go, what does that mean? I came from a Christian background, and the idea of worshiping God and, prostrating myself in front of some deity and having them control my life, they don't want it. They don't want that. And so I make it clear that when I use the word worship, it means a different thing. It means that in this case, if I'm worshiping a deity associated with a planet, what I'm doing is I'm actually actualizing and activating that aspect of myself. So I'm exteriorizing my focus on, let's say, for a Mars deity. We could Hanuman, for instance, the Monkey King, the god of war. It doesn't matter. If you're focusing on that, what I'm really doing is I am actualizing my own internal willpower, my energy, my strength, my ability to take action. That's what Mars really represents. The ability to take action and to empower your energy. Now, that's helpful for me because of the way my chart is. Mars is a really powerful and helpful planet for me. Mars may not be what you need. You worship Mars, you might be causing yourself problems, you might make yourself sick, you might create conflict in your life. So this is what I mean. You got to know. This is why it's so important to know what your chart is, because you go to just any guru and they say, "Oh, chant to Krishna." Well, if you don't understand that Krishna is a specific aspect of the moon, then you could just be putting yourself into emotional chaos. You'll learn. Krishna will eventually bring you around to learn, but it's either are you addressing your strengths or are you bringing up your weaknesses and going through the challenging lessons that come with your weaknesses. It's up to you. So let's take a look at the planets and what they represent. Bear in mind, it's not a good idea to self-diagnose. So as I walk through these things, don't say, oh, that's what I need. You might be completely wrong. It's good to get a reading from a qualified astrologer who knows what they're talking about and can tell you what it is that you need, because it's like walking into a pharmacy and just looking on the shelf and go, I think I'll try that medication, when you don't know what the heck it is or what even is wrong with you. Okay, so it's my experience. So let me talk about the sense of self before I get into going into the planets. I'm going through some changes in my life and some experiences which have made it really abundantly clear that without a healthy, strong sense of self, you cannot accomplish anything. And this is something that is plaguing Western society. We have people in our modern Western society who are very smart, who are very spiritual, who are very knowledgeable, but they cannot take action. They can come to deep realizations about themselves, but they can't take those realizations and turn them into action. And the reason for that is that we are a society in this time of fractured or non-existent self. And this comes about in childhood. You know, when you're an infant and a toddler, that is the formative period where your parents meet your needs. If your parents do not meet your needs, then you cannot create a sense of self. If you cannot create a sense of self, then there is nothing for your consciousness to root into which results in actions. If you do not have a sense of self, then what ends up happening is that you are simply a slave to whatever impulse goes through you at the moment. This is the difference between a toddler and an adult. If a toddler does not get their needs met, in other words, if the parent is not focused on loving the child and reflecting back to the child the objective experience of this is who you are, that child does not create a sense of self. And they spend their whole life running around empty, looking for things. This is why there's so much drug use. This is why there's so much overeating. This is why there's so much dysfunction, violence against women, objectifying people sexually, obsession with money, fear of aliens, fear of reptilians, talking about how the elite are destroying our lives. This is infantile lack of self. Because if you don't have a lack of self, then what ends up happening is that you are a victim of everything outside of you. And so this is why we have such an impulsive, addictive society. And so these things can be remedied through, if you get the correct psychotherapy, 12-step work. We get a lot of people who are addictive personalities. And spirituality. When spirituality is done correctly, the whole point of it is to give you an authentic sense of yourself, your identity. When you have that, then what happens is the experiences that you have, the relationships that you have, the knowledge and the wisdom that you gain as you go through life becomes rooted in your sense of self. And when you have that sense of self, those changes then you can take action on. You can be consistent. You can have discipline. If you don't have a sense of self, the only thing that will happen is that you will be a slave to whatever emotions or impulses are flying through you at any given moment. And I've run into this. I've certainly gone through this, but I've run into this with people. I've run into it with students. One of the biggest challenges is that, as a teacher, I can point out to somebody, what's missing and what they need to learn and, help them with that. But if they don't have a sense of self, then what ends up happening is that awareness does not result in any actions. And actions are what change you. Actions are what give you things in your life. Actions is what stimulates the universe to bring and manifest to you what you want. This is again one of the biggest problems with the law of attraction as it is being taught. The law of attraction says whatever you're feeling sends out a vibration, and that vibration comes to you. Whatever you're thinking sends out a vibration, and that thought will come to you. There's some truth to that. I'm not going to say that's not true, but if that's the only level that you're living at, then nothing will be permanent, and you will be a slave to your feelings, because it's impossible to change your feelings. Are just reactions based on your experience in life. And if you have whatever your experience is, life is going to poke at you and then you're going to have a reaction. It's just that. It's just a reaction. And if the universe is basically punishing you for your negative reactions all the time, nothing's ever going to get done. The same is true with your thoughts. Your thoughts arise out of internal experience on unconscious levels and conscious levels, but sometimes you don't have any control over your thoughts either. And so if you're a slave to that, then the truth is the law of attraction, as it's taught, whatever you're vibrating at is what's going to come at you. It's a very, very weak way to live. And unfortunately, it will never work, because the truth is you can try and make yourself feel good and have positive thoughts all the time and think love and light all the time, but life just doesn't work like that. If then you end up in a state of constant denial or constant shame because you can't get your thoughts to be perfect all the time. And so you end up living with this dysfunctional parent that's constantly punishing you or telling you, turn that frown upside down, you better not cry, you better not be sad, because bad things will happen. So you feel shameful for your own emotional and mental experience. A healthy sense of self says, yes, I'm in a bad mood today, or yes, I'm sad, or yes, I just had a really violent or, a demeaning thought about somebody. But a sense of self, healthy sense of self says, that's okay. Your thoughts are not you. Your feelings are not you. You are this, and you are loved. And that's how people get through life, can take action, can get what they want out of life, can have healthy relationships. Let's talk about relationships for a moment. If you do not have a healthy sense of self, you cannot, I repeat, if you do not have a healthy, strong sense of self, you cannot have a functional relationship. It won't happen. Relationships, true relationships, especially romantic relationships, are based on having two selves meet and go to a deeper level of intimacy. The whole point of a relationship is getting to know yourself on a deeper level. When I used to do marriage ceremonies, I would give a little speech, and I can't remember, I had a little speech all perfectly set up, very poetic. I can't remember what it was now. But basically what I would say is that you're making a vow not to just be there with somebody for the rest of your life. You're not getting married because you're lonely and you want somebody to spend time with and be nice to you and make you feel good. That's not what you're doing. You're getting married. What you're saying to your partner is, I know that you are going to have a deeper experience of yourself, and I am going to hold your hand as you go through the crisis of self-awareness. That is a true marriage vow. Not like I'm going to be there for you, you stay and be physically there for me. You're going to wipe my nose when I'm sick. That's not it. That's the superficial. The underlying one is, by being together and being two authentic selves, we are going to go to a deeper sense of intimacy with ourselves. And when you hit the crises of getting to know your true self, I am going to hold your hand while you do it. That is a relationship that cannot be done if you don't have a sense of self. Because again, if you grow up as a child with parents that don't have the ability to love you, either they abuse you, or they're non-existent, or they're emotionally unavailable, or they shame you, or they confuse you, or they, if they don't give consistent love, and again, that can't happen without a sense of self either. If you don't get consistent love as a toddler, you don't create a sense of self to root and ground your experiences in, which then allow you to take action. So you get the point. I teach this all the time. It's not about how you feel that manifests your reality. The universe doesn't care how you feel. I know you do. You want to feel good. I want to feel good. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel good. But sometimes we don't feel good. But if you have a sense of self, it doesn't matter if you feel good or you feel bad. You have this compass that allows you to take action. You have this compass that allows you to come to realizations and root those realizations, anchor them in a sense of self, so that then the next day you can take action. Here's one of the things I've noticed about people that I've experienced and people that I've worked with that do not have a sense of self, is that it doesn't matter what awarenesses they come to. I can help them come to deep awarenesses about themselves, but without a sense of identity, those awarenesses fade. The next day, they can't take action. And I'll tell them the same day over and over and over again to take, here's what you need to do, and here's what's going on with you, and here are the actions you need to take. And they go, yes, I see that now, but they can't follow through. Now, listen, I'm not talking out of school here. I'm also a human being, and it takes one to know one. I'm somebody who I went through a traumatic childhood, and I've done, 40 years of work in all kinds of different ways to learn how to heal. And the things, sometimes there are wounds that can't ever be completely healed, but there are ways to compensate, and that takes action. Specifically taking action that's contrary to what you're feeling. And people who don't have a sense of self, that sense of self which gives you a consistency throughout your life regardless of how you're feeling. One day you're in a good mood, you still take specific actions, healthy actions towards yourself and towards others. You wake up and you're in a good mood or a bad mood, whatever it is, that sense of self guides your actions, which then creates responses. Listen, people are most interested in how you treat them. They're not interested in how you feel. That's not true. I'm finding out there are some people whose lives are completely focused around how you feel about them. And they'll spend every waking second either trying to get you to feel good about them or, worrying about why you don't feel good about them. And that's, again, somebody who has no sense of self. But the truth of the matter is most people don't care how you feel about them. They care about what you do for them. You have a boss and you go to work and you don't feel like being at work that day. You don't like the work and you don't like the boss. The boss is going to say, hey, how are you doing today? And you're going to say, I'm having a crappy day. And he's going to say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Anyway, here's your schedule for today. Here's what I need you to do. He's not going to go, oh, you don't like the job? You don't like what you're doing? Oh, gosh, here's some money. Go home. He's going to say, I'm sorry you're not in a good mood, but I hired you to do a job and I need you to do it. So go do your job. If you do your job and do it, and put on a good face and pretend like you're enjoying your job and treat your customers well or do whatever your duties are, even if you're not having a good day and you don't want to be there, at the end of the day, the boss is going to say, hey, you did a great job. Here's some money. Same thing with relationships. People are interested in how you treat them, not in how you feel about them. Same thing with the universe. The universe isn't as interested in how you're feeling at the moment. The universe is interested in the actions that you are taking. If you take actions toward your soul, living in concert with your soul, and you take healthy actions towards your soul, regardless of how you feel, the universe will respond by giving you positive things. That's called karma. That's what karma is. All of these things can be experienced through the planets. So I'm trying to tell you that now let's take a look at the planets and see them as aspects of the self. And now we use this map of the self to either work against failings that we have. Like there's two basic strategies. One is to punch up the planets that are working for you and helping you. The other one is to use planets to oppose planets that aren't working well for you. So in other words, let's say the north node is causing you a lot of problems. You can use Jupiter, which represents the higher self. North node represents unconscious issues. The Jupiter represents, you can use your higher self to overcome your unconscious self-sabotaging issues. At the same time, you can also appease planets. So let's say Rahu is causing you problems. You can appease Rahu, the north node. And by appeasing the north node, then the north node will calm down and will give you the lesson without all of the heartache that comes through it. I just got recently been getting my ass kicked by Rahu, so I'm not sure what to do about that. But those are the three ways. One is to punch up the planets that's working for you, or use an opposing planet to balance the planet that's causing a problem, or appease the problem-causing planet so that it will relax and give you the positive lessons as opposed to the negative ones. Okay, so before we do that, we need to take a look at the sense of self. So I'm going to use what's called the thunder wheel. Let's bring that up here. All right, so let me move over here so I can look at you while I'm looking at this as well. So this is a thunder wheel, and this is used all over the world. They've got the Bagua, which means the 8 gates in Chinese shamanism, Taoism. You've got the Vedic, the East Indian Dig chakra, which means direction wheel. You've got the Norse 9 worlds, and so you've got these 8 directions in the center, which comes to 9. So this is a map that's used all over the world, and there are multiple maps that use the same directions for the same essences. The Norse use the same as the Vedic and the Taoist. If you really want to get masterful on an ancient tradition that talks about the directions, the Taoist tradition, the Chinese tradition, goes into great depth, which is what feng shui is, by the way. Feng shui is knowing how to use the 8 directions to achieve something. But the Vedic, the East Indian also has one as well. Anyway, we won't get into that. So the top of this is north, the bottom is south. So this is the planets. Let's just look at the actual direction wheel itself, which I call the thunder wheel. So there it is. I don't have the directions there, but the top is north, the bottom is south, east and west, northeast, northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast, okay, and then the center, right? So the center is the self, and the other 8 directions are the 8 aspects of the personality that is influencing it. Okay, so let's go back up here to the planet wheel. You can call it a planet wheel. Okay, so in the north we have Mercury, in the northeast we have Jupiter, in the east we have the Sun, in the southeast we have Venus, in the south we have Mars, the southwest we have the north node of the moon, which is called Rahu in the Vedic tradition. In the west we have Saturn, and in the northwest we have the moon, and in the center would be the planet Earth, which is you. So Earth is being influenced by all these other 8 planets. There's actually a 9th one here, which is the south node of the moon, which if we were forced to place it somewhere, we could place it in the northeast. Technically, we tend not to place the south node anywhere because he doesn't have a head. He's about leaving this world, so he's not interested in this world. But if we had to place him somewhere, we could place him in the northeast because he represents the highest spirituality. We'll talk about those things in a second. So let's talk about the 8 directions. You can look at the planets there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ascribe psychological aspects to each one of these directions. Okay, So, and bear in mind, if we're talking about sense of self, the sense of self, you can't see it, but I'm moving my cursor. Maybe you can see it. Moving my cursor around the center of the wheel there. So the center of the wheel is the sense of self that I was talking about. If you do not have a sense of self, then the influence of the planets will just toss you around. I've spent time with people who don't have a sense of self. And sometimes, the defense mechanisms are so sophisticated that you don't realize that you're interacting with somebody who at their core has a black hole. There's nothing there. And so what they do is they create these sophisticated masks to interact with the world. And so you think you're talking to somebody who's making conscious decisions, coming to conscious awareness and making plans, and you come to these, like if you're working in a relationship with somebody and figuring out how to have a better relationship, and they're having these awarenesses of themselves and they're seeing things in you, and you're coming to agreements about how to interact with each other and plans that you're going to do in the future. But if that sense of self is a black hole, what ends up happening is the next day they've either completely forgotten what they've said, or they have a feeling, and the feeling will have no logical connection. And just because they had a feeling, they're going to completely change their mind about you, how they feel about you, and not follow through with what they've said. When somebody doesn't have a sense of self, what ends up happening is that they are completely, totally motivated by whatever feeling or impulse is going through them at the moment. If at that moment they feel that you don't love them, they will hate you and act out against you. If at that moment they get some feeling that you do love them, then they think you're amazing. And they go from these extremes. They will lash out at you or love you. You never know what's going to happen because you don't know what feeling is going to go through them at any moment, which will dictate their actions towards you. So you can never create a relationship with them because the actions that they take are based completely in whatever feeling is going through them. I remember telling somebody about love, and as you hear me teach on the channel, love is not a feeling. Love is an action. You can't take actions without a sense of self. And this person was very confused by that and said, what do you mean by that? I don't agree with that. And I said, when I tell somebody I love them, it means that I'm committed to them and that I am there for them and that I'm going to stand by them and protect them and love them. And I may not have a squishy feeling at the moment, but if I say to them, I love you, it means I'm saying I'm committed to you and to your health and your happiness and doing my part to be a part of that from here on out. It's a way of letting you know that you're safe with me and I am there for you. This person had no idea what I was talking about. To them, love was a feeling. And so when you don't have a sense of self, then if you have a loving feeling, you're loving towards that person. If you have a negative feeling because you're in a bad mood or they did something that triggered you, then you hate them and you never want to see them again. And then that'll change in 10 minutes because they'll do something that'll make you love them. They have no sense of self. It's a very, very sad, it's a very sad thing. So we want to use the planets to empower our sense of self so that we can take action. So in the top we have Mercury. Mercury is the intellect. So the intellect is not the mind. In Western society, when I use the word mind, most people automatically think of intellect. In fact, there are so many people who don't know what the mind is. They think mind is the brain. But the intellect is the part of you that makes decisions. It analyzes and makes decisions on what is right, what is wrong. It figures things out. So without an intellect, you can't drive a car. I'm here in Australia. I was born, obviously from my accent, I was born in the US. And so in the US, we drive on the right side of the road. Now, that is an intellectual decision. You have to have an intellect to know To drive a car, you have to drive in the US on the right side of the road. Here, I have to use my intellect to change that. I literally have to get in the car and tell myself every day when I'm driving, left side of the road, left side of the road. As I'm coming out of my driveway, I have to say left side of the road to tell my intellect what to do so that it knows how to drive in Australia. So the intellect figures things out. It doesn't operate emotionally, it operates logically from three-dimensional reality. So the intellect cannot comprehend deep subjects that go beyond three-dimensional reality. But it's very effective because without the intellect, you can't function. You can't know how to drive, you can't know how to walk, you can't know how to make food, turn on an oven, turn off lights, use a phone. You need your intellect to do that. So that's in the north. The northeast is Jupiter. So the north also is potential. That's the other thing I was going to say. Potential. This is energy that is potential, energy that hasn't manifested yet. That's why the intellect is there, because as this unmanifested energy comes into your reality, your intellect has to pick it apart and figure it out in order how to manifest it. So this is potential things that are coming into your life that could be manifested. It is your intellect. Okay, so the northeast. The northeast is Jupiter there. Jupiter is the superconscious. It represents what we would call the mountain of the gods, like Mount Olympus, or Valhalla or heaven. The highest heavens. This is where this energy is. Jupiter is the planet of ether. This is the element that represents the highest vibration of spiritual energy that has not manifested yet. This is why, if in doubt, work with ether. If you don't know which element needs to be grounded, you can, ether is one of those elements you can use. And so breath work, meditation, spirituality, worship of the gods, this is highest ether. This represents your superconscious. So it's not your higher self. We'll talk about that later. It's the superconscious, which is the teacher, the guru, the gods, the stars in the sky. Jupiter is actually, some people would say that Jupiter is actually trying to become a star. It is a very big planet. The truth is, it's not nearly massive enough to become a star, but it has properties similar to that. It has so much mass and so much electromagnetism and so much that if it had more mass, then it would collapse in on itself and become a star. But it's not a star. But it has that ethereal. It has all the building blocks of a star. Just doesn't have enough mass to become one. But it has the largest mass in our solar system except for the sun, and it has by far the largest electromagnetic field in the solar system, second only to the sun. So this is your superconscious, and it wants to guide you. So this is why we worship. If you want a default direction to set an altar, it's in the northeast, because this is the realm of the highest consciousness. This is also what's called a ghost door in Taoist understanding, meaning that if you don't protect that direction, then demons can come through. And in this case, it means when you become religiously too polarized. If you become like a super hardcore born-again Christian, you can become racist, sexist, judgmental, and so that's would be the demon of how becoming too religious and not spiritual enough. So you put the altar there to keep you from becoming too extreme in your views, because the northeast also represents your zeal. So you could have zeal for truth, or you could have zeal for your religion. And this is what happens with people who are psychologically immature. They go to extremes like little children, and this is good and that is bad. Jupiter is expansive. Jupiter is accepting. Jupiter is loving. Jupiter is kind. Jupiter represents sacrifice. self-sacrifice for others. So this is the priest, and this is the energy of the Northeast. It's your superconscious mind, where you get the highest spiritual awareness comes to you through the Northeast. In the East, you have the sun. The sun is your identity, your what people call the ego. People really don't understand that word. There's nothing wrong with having an ego. In fact, if you don't have an ego, you can't function. It's just like I'm talking about before. If you don't have a sense of self, then you are simply blown about by whatever impulse goes through you, and you have no ability to take action. So the sun is very important because it represents the identity. I prefer to use the word identity, to be able to say, I am so and so, I am this is who I am. People who don't have a sense of self are constantly being influenced by whatever's around them. If they're, they tend to morph and become whoever they're with. They become highly influenced by whoever's around them and whatever's around them. If you have a sense of self, then whatever wind comes at you or whatever change in temperature, you still hold on to who you are. And this is what the sun represents. It represents the identity. In the subconscious, we go down, I've gotten ahead of myself here, we go down to the southwest, southeast here, where Venus is. Venus represents the subconscious mind, represents the ability to intend your needs. It represents the ability to relate. There's two places I'm going to talk about when it comes to relating to others. Venus represents relationships. So here is where we really experience our humanity. Our humanity in the sense of wanting to experience love, wanting to experience sensuality, wanting to experience sensations like good food, comfortable clothing, nice things, and also relationships, wanting to connect and interact with other people and have that ebb and flow. So this is why sex comes into it, but it's not just from a sense of I want to feel good and you're a sexual object. It's no, I want to interact with you. I want to know who you are and let us connect on a deep level and have a relationship. Venus operates with that, and this is called the human door in the Taoist tradition. And this is because it operates from the realm of the subconscious mind, which is the ability to intend our reality, which is something that is very human. It's also a place of meditation, to be able to meditate, which is using the true mind to be able to manifest. You see, directly opposite Venus is the moon. The moon is the reflective mind. So that represents meditation as well. But as the moon reflects, then the subconscious mind can then take that reflection and then turn it into something and manifest it. So Venus is seen as the teacher of the terrestrial gods, or the teacher of the gods of fertility. So in the Indo-European tradition, whether it's the Norse tradition or whether it's the Greek tradition or whether it's the Vedic tradition, there are two sets of gods. There is the celestial gods, known as the Devas or the Aesir, and then you have the terrestrial gods, which are known as the Vanir or the Asuras. And they represent pure spiritual as opposed to physical. So Venus is the guru, the teacher of the terrestrial gods of fertility and human experience. And of course, the downside of that is it's not, the Devas look down on them like, oh, the Aesir look down on them. You're too physical. You're not spiritual enough. And they look up at the Aesir and they go, no, there's no point in the spirituality if you can't enjoy it in the physical realm. It's just all a bunch of talk. We put it into action and experience the beauty of spirituality in our physical world. So these are the two polar opposites. Venus represents the human experience, which is humans are divine beings that are having a physical experience. And so Venus lords over the ability to have physical experiences and let them be spiritual at the same time. In the south, we have Mars. Mars is I'm going to use the word the ego actualization. Remember, we talked about without a sense of self, you can't ground your awarenesses and root them into a sense of self. Sense of self is necessary to take action. Action is what changes you. Discipline and disciplined repeated actions is what changes you. Going to the gym, you want to become Mr. Olympia? You got to go to the gym every day. You got to go, 3, 4, 5 days a week. You got to, regulate your diet. You have to be consistent. You have to take consistent action. You can want to be Mr. Olympia all you want, but if you don't take the action, nothing will happen. You can sit in front of a gym in your car, or you can get a gym membership and go and sit and drink smoothies at the bar and watch everybody else work out, and you will not become Mr. Olympia. You have to take action. So Mars is the ego actualizer. This is where the identity, which we see in the East, this is where the identity takes action to accomplish things. It's also the realm of destruction of negativity. So this is the realm, in the Chinese, they call it fame. You only get fame by taking action. Again, you want to be famous for being Mr. Olympia, you have to go to the gym and work out. Mars gives you the ability to take action. Mars is your energy. The physical energy in your body is Mars. It's the energy to go and accomplish things. When you are going up against obstacles, Mars gives you a competitive nature, so you can do the unspiritual thing of saying, I'm going to beat this person at that if you're in competition. But you turn that competition towards yourself and you say, I'm going to be better tomorrow than I am today. Again, without a sense of self, this can't be done. Because Mars, you won't have the ability to take action. Because Mars says, I'm going to take action tomorrow on what I'm realizing today. If you have no sense of self, you can say, tomorrow I'm going to be this, but then some impulse will come through you and then you won't take action because you'll be too tired, or you'll be bored, or you'll be unhappy, or whatever it is. Mars is the actualization of the discipline that says, I said I was going to do this, and even though I don't feel like it, I'm going to take action on it anyway. I'm going to use my energy to take action to move forward. So that's the south. The southwest is the north node of the moon, also known as Rahu. And this is the unconscious mind. So the north node of the moon represents unresolved past life issues. It represents unresolved issues in this lifetime, and this is strongly associated with the sense of self. So here is where you're going to find a lot of the problems. If the north node of the moon is not functioning well for you, this could be incredibly debilitating. I know, because I've been tossed around by the north node of the moon the past month or so, and I can tell you, without a strong sense of self, it could destroy you. So this is where you find addiction, impulse, lack of control of impulse, illusion, becoming deluded, superficial associations. This is talking about love affairs, talking about relationships. I was told by somebody that it takes at least 9 months to be able to get to know somebody. So those first 9 months are all projection. So whenever you fall in love with somebody, like you meet somebody, you go out on a date, even if, within a couple of 2 or 3 dates, the love is really, especially the more intense the love is, that tells you how much of it is projection. Meaning you are projecting onto them what you fantasize about, what you think you are. You're also projecting onto them, you're doing to them what you want done to you. So, if you're taking care of somebody and loving them and you're treating them like they're the greatest thing in the world, that's because that's what you want for yourself. And so that's okay. All relationships start out as projection. There's no way around it. But eventually you have to be able to take that projection and either turn it into something real, or you need to be able to move past that illusion of the projection, your perfect partner, and you find out, oh man, their farts stink and they have BO, and sometimes they're not in a good mood, and oh my God, they did that, and I thought he was different than that. You learn to accept them for who they are, and then you learn how to love them. You also learn how to be loved by them. And so this all happens, this is the unconscious. When the unconscious, meaning what you're not aware of, that's what the unconscious means, what you're not aware of. Difference between the subconscious and the unconscious is the subconscious is things that you may have some awareness of, but you're just not thinking about it at the moment. Your driver's license number, your social security number, things like that. The unconscious means you're not thinking about it at all. But that's where all of the action happens. And the things that happen to us that we can't tolerate, we shove it down into the unconscious, and then that ends up driving us. If you don't have a sense of self, then what ends up happening is that all of your unconscious issues will control you. They'll make all the decisions for you. You may want to go to the gym and work out every day, but if you have an unconscious block to whatever it is, you won't be able to take action. So that's the north node of the moon, and that's in the southwest in the realm of the unconscious. The west, this is where Saturn is. And Saturn is the planet of karma, is the planet of limitation, is the planet of discipline. So here we have Saturn directly opposite the moon. Saturn is directly opposite the sun. So the sun is the self, and when the sun, the ego, goes unchecked, it expands to such a degree that nothing else exists except yourself. And so Saturn is limitation. So Saturn says, no, you have to live with other people. And so here Saturn is sitting in the spot of relationships. Because the east is how you identify, which is how you feed yourself. The west is how you sacrifice and give to others. So Saturn is the planet of karma. If you want to make Saturn happy, one of the things you can do is go volunteer at a homeless shelter and cook, scoop out soup, sit in a soup line and give soup to homeless people. You're sacrificing and giving to others and you don't benefit. This is what Saturn does. So Saturn sits on the opposite side on the west and says, no, you live with other people. You must give to them. You must sacrifice. So in the west, we find out how we give to others. This is how you learn what your relationships are like with other people. So the east is the expansive nature of the ego, which wants to expand out into infinity. I'm the only thing that exists. Give to me. I am this. I am that. And Saturn says, no, you have to limit that and work with other people and sacrifice. And then we have this back and forth because Saturn says, to an extreme, will say, you don't have an identity. You are only here for other people. And again, if you don't have a sense of self, this is called codependence. You modify yourself and your behavior in order to be loved and accepted by other people. The sun says, screw other people. I'm here for myself. Now you have to have a balance. So you have to have a sense of self and identity, and you also have to have awareness that there are other people and limit yourself and have the discipline to give and interact with other people. So this is what happens in the West. This is relationships, and this is Saturn. It's strange because Venus is the planet of relationships, but these placements of the planets are showing which planet is keeping this aspect in check in some cases. In this case, Saturn is saying, I'm keeping the relationship in check because I am limitation. Okay, moving to the northwest, this is the moon, and this is the higher self or the meditative mind. The moon reflects the soul, the same way that the moon reflects the sun. So the mind, sorry, I misspoke. The mind reflects the soul, like the moon reflects the sun. So the moon is not the mind. The mind is the intellect. Excuse me, sorry. The moon is not the intellect. Freudian slip there. The moon is not the intellect. The moon is the mind. Mercury is the intellect. It is not the mind. It does not reflect. It clamps down and makes decisions based on information. The moon does not clamp down. It opens up and it sees things from a distance, just like the moon looks at the earth from a distance, and it reflects on things objectively. This is the realm of the ascended masters. The ascended masters, the elves in the Norse tradition, the bodhisattvas, these are human beings that have achieved their highest awareness and stand at the doorway to infinity, and they turn around and they look back down to earth and they guide humans. And so this is where the moon is. The true function of the moon, of the mind, is to help you to see things from an objective perspective so that you can take actions that will be healthy and healing for the entire universe. So having a healthy moon will help you to go, you know what would be helpful for me is if I do this. In other words, you're in a toxic relationship with somebody that has no sense of self. The moon will say, you know, the best thing I can do for this person is to not give in to their demands. And it also then says the best thing I can do for myself is not to give in to their demands. So the moon connects you to your needs and everybody else's needs. And you find the path through connecting to the moon, which will tell you the path that will be beneficial for everybody. It's a planet of healing, and healing is healing for all. So you never have to make a choice between what you truly want and what other people want, because what is best for you will be best for them, and what is best for them will be best for you. If you have to make a choice between, well, I can't do this for myself because I can't be selfish right now, that'll be bad for them, you're not operating objectively. You also can't come from the place of, well, screw them, I'm going to do what makes me happy, I don't care if they like it or not. What you have to do is have that balanced. The moon brings balance as well. You have to be in that balanced place where you can say, you know, what is best for me is to do this, and even though these people may not like it, that's the best thing for them. Okay? You don't want to give your child ice cream 24 hours a day because they'll get sick. They're not going to like that. They want ice cream all the time, but you give them what is best for them and best for you. Okay? That's just one example. Not the best example, because that could also be Saturn as well. All right, so those are the 8 directions and the 8 sense of the self. If in the center you have the sense of self, the unified sense of self, this is the other thing that's important. One thing I've run into with people who don't have a sense of self is that they have multiple masks through which they interact with the world. And those masks are illusions. So when people who don't have a sense of self, what ends up happening is they have a very, very sophisticated defense mechanism, depending on how smart they are. So if they're very intelligent and they don't have a sense of self, then they have a very sophisticated defense mechanism of how to interact with people. You know, we could go on the extreme spectrum of, say, like the psychopathic narcissist. So a narcissist doesn't have a sense of self, and so the way that they interact with the world is that everything is an object. So they see everything and everybody as a means to their own, you know, they feed off of everything and everybody without any awareness or any empathy for their feelings. And so they will manipulate, and so they'll pretend to be different people in order to get what they want from you, to gain your trust, so that then they can victimize you and take what they want from you. Con men are like this. Con men know they're going to steal from you, but they gain your confidence by pretending to be the victim or pretending to be the best friend, or they put on different masks in order to get your confidence so they can steal your money. The codependent, this is somebody who placates other people in order to get loved. They have an agenda as well. They pretend to love everything that comes out of your mouth. They pretend to want to give to you, but their agenda is they want you to love them. And so they give, but they give with strings attached, and there's a resentment when they don't get what they want. The borderline personality disorder. This is somebody who who uses different masks in order to get an emotional high off of you. They're not manipulating you, they're not trying to steal from you. They just simply want to have a feeling of feeling loved and happy. And so they will either give to you in order to make you feel good and then get high off of you feeling good, or they will become a therapist and they will try and help you, or pretend to allow themselves to look at themselves. Actually, they're not pretending. They look at themselves and make awarenesses of themselves in order to keep the emotional high that comes when two people are negotiating on a psychological level to create a relationship. They actually don't have the ability to create anything or take any action on those awarenesses. They're just getting high off of the let's communicate, let's talk to each other right now. Or they become the victim and then they pull your energy out of you, your love out of you. These are just different ways that people can use. People who don't have a sense of self put on different masks, either consciously or unconsciously, in order to give a false identity in order to get what they want from you. So it's incredibly important. If you have that sense of self, then you truly have a compass from which you can take action for yourself, and you also have a compass from which you can protect your boundaries. And you'll say, I wish I could do that for you, but for my health, I have to do this. Or I wish I could do that for you, but the truth is I'm your friend, and even though I would love to tell you what you want to hear right now because I want you to love me, as your friend I have to tell you the truth. And the truth is you're not going to like it, blah, blah, blah. And even if the person rejects them, they have a compass. And what's most important is to hold on to that compass, that sense of self. Part of that sense of self is the awareness that you cannot survive in this universe without the health of all other beings in the universe. Everybody's responsible for their own health, so you can't force people to do the right thing. But you can choose to take actions that are healthy for you and for them, even if they don't like it. So these are all things that have to do with the sense of self. So now I want to do something very interesting, which it's just an idea. I'm gonna flesh it out with you right now to see how it works. So as you look at this thunder wheel here with the planets on it, what we want to do is we want to see how the planets balance each other out. And so now I'm going to go through each of the planets and show you the negative and the positive, so the lower and the higher vibration of the planet. So starting with Mercury. Mercury is the intellect, and we have it in the north because the north represents unmanifested, undifferentiated potential. And here, the planet Mercury figures things out because it takes this nebulous mass of just energy that hasn't become anything and starts to arbitrarily turn it into something by saying that's up, that's down, this is right, this is left, that's good, that's bad. And that actually is what helps manifest. So Mercury is helping to manifest energy as it's coming into your life. The lower vibration of Mercury is that Mercury is also a defense mechanism against your emotions. When your emotions become too overwhelming, you have to sit down and figure things out logically. That's good, except when you don't have the ability to tolerate your emotions. A lot of people can't tolerate their negative feelings, and so they stay in their intellect. This is what happens with people who smoke a lot of weed. THC gets you stuck in your intellect. You think you're having this big, deep awareness of life, and I'm meditating on but in reality, you're just stuck in your intellect, and it's mental masturbation. So people who are stuck in their intellect can think all day and talk about things all day, but they can't apply it in their life because that's not what the intellect is for. The intellect is for figuring things out, but you have to be able to take action. So the higher aspect of Mercury is to be able to understand that what you're thinking about is actually infinite energy, that really it's an illusion that anything is manifested in any specific form. And when you understand that, then you use the intellect to just give you the ability to interface with the reality, knowing it's an illusion. So when you're stuck in the intellect, you can't take action. So directly opposite Mercury at the bottom there is Mars. Mars is action. So Mars gives you the ability to put into action what your intellect has figured out. If your Mars is weak, you're stuck in your head. If you're stuck in your head too much, Mars says, hey, let's what are we going to do here? Because Mercury says, well, let's see, we could do this, or we could do that, or we could do this, and we could also do that. And Mars says, make a decision. Let's just go and do something. Pick one. You know what? I'm going to pick for you. Number 3. Let's go. Mars takes action on all of that thinking. All right, let's go now to Jupiter and the North Node. So the North Node is unconsciousness, unresolved emotional issues, illusion, addiction. This is the negative aspect of the North Node. The higher aspect of the North Node is awareness of your faults, your self-sabotage. You go, wow, you know, I've been doing this and I've been running away from my feelings. What I really want is I want to have a deep emotional connection, but because I'm in so much pain, I've been going after superficial relationships just to have my ego feel good about myself, but it's all an illusion. So the North Node at the higher level says, here's how I have been sabotaging myself. At the lower level, the North Node is you are saying, oh yeah, that really hot looking girl on the beach smiled at me. She must think I'm a stud. I'm going to date her. Well, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. And maybe she won't think you're a stud in 10 minutes. So you don't even know who she is. You're just chasing after her so you can feel good about yourself. Jupiter is opposite that. So when the North Node gets wrapped up in illusion and superficial ways of appeasing itself, Jupiter says, hang on a second, that girl's only 18 years old, you're 45, you know, that's really not helpful for her. You're just objectifying a young girl. And also, you're not going to get what you want because she's looking at starting her life and going to college, and you're looking at, you know, getting ready for retirement. So you're going to need to have somebody who wants the same life, who can love you the way you need to be loved and see you and have the same life experience. Jupiter's going to give you that kind of knowledge. Jupiter, when it's out of whack, then it can just be too lofty, and it can give too much of itself, sacrifice too much of itself. And the North Node says, hey, we got to be selfish about some things here. Come on, we got to learn how to be selfish too. So this is the balance between Jupiter and the North Node. Going to the Sun and Saturn, we talked a little bit about that. Sun is the expansion of the ego. Saturn is the limitation of the ego. Saturn, when it's out of balance, is self-critical and says, you're no good, you can't accomplish anything, that's not good enough, you did this, you're a bad person, knock it off, go lose some weight. And Sun says, hang on, I'm here to enjoy myself. And so I'm not going to, I'm going to break some rules, I'm going to give to myself, I'm going to focus on myself, because if I don't focus on myself, I'm no good to myself or anybody else. So Saturn says you can't have anything, and the Sun says I must have everything. And so they balance each other out that way. And then we have the Moon and Venus. And so We talked a little bit about that because the moon is about emotions and connection. Venus is, when the lower aspect of the moon is that you're very moody, that you just have these emotions that go up and down and you have no control over how you're feeling. You're sad one day, you're happy the next. There's just all this moodiness that happens. So in order to ground that, Venus says we need to have relationship, which means Venus says there are other people in the world. We are in a relationship with other people. And so then that aligns the emotions so that you can have empathy towards other people. So when Venus is out of whack, then Venus is just focused on superficial things like money, cars, tasty food, sex, things like that. So then you can start trying to manifest just the basic superficial physical things, and the moon then looks at things objectively and says, all that physical stuff is great, but do you see the connection between different things? Do you see your connection to the universe? Do you see your connection to other people? And so the moon allows Venus to go, oh yeah, that's right. It's all about a mutual beneficial interaction with others. So this is how the planets can balance each other. This is not the only way to balance the planets because, for instance, let's see, what was I going to do here? The sun can balance itself, and the moon can balance Saturn. Mercury can balance the moon. So there are other ways to balance the planets. I'm just, again, fleshing out, looking at it in this way, how the planets can be opposite each other. So don't get stuck in that one mode. This is just a thought experiment for me as I'm going forward. So anyways, those are some of my thoughts about the planets and their aspect to the personality. If you would like to have an astrological reading, and we can take a look and see some ways that you can heal your core sense of self, you can go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. And you can get a reading from me or from one of my apprentices. If you want to learn the astrology that I teach, you can go to astrology certification.thunderwizard.com, I think. Astrologycertification.thunderwizard.com. You can also, if in doubt, you can go to courses.thunderwizard.com. That has all of my books, my DVDs, my video teachings, my services like astrology services or rune services or certifications. neo.thunderwizard.com. We already talked about the 4 tools you've got to know if you want to be able to control your own life and get the universe to respond to you. You need neo.thunderwizard.com. So again, the whole point of this is that we do need to have a healthy sense of self, and we all struggle with some aspect of that. That's really one of the reasons that we come here. The soul comes here to learn and to grow, to experience. And so astrology is a way to do that. And again, I believe that the more empowering way to look at yourself is to see that everything outside of you is a reflection of you. So working with the planets is really working on your own issues within yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses. Worshipping deities is a way of just simply activating. It's like putting a spotlight on things within yourself. Again, for me, Mars is really important. So when I worship Mars, I'm putting a spotlight on my energy, my willpower, my physical health. These are things that work really well for me and allow me to operate from a sense of self. Some planets I work with, like for instance, if I try to work with Rahu, I get my ass kicked every time and my sense of self seems to get destroyed and then I can't function. For you, it might be the opposite. Rahu might be the very planet that you need in order to have a healthy sense of self. So the only way to know that is to have a qualified astrologer take a look at that and help you find out whatever it is that you need to do to empower yourself. And without an empowered self, you can't take action. And without an empowered self, you cannot manifest. I've learned this, on all of the intellectualization in the world and all of the talking about love and light and the universe will get you nowhere unless you can put it into action. You can't do that without a sense of self. And some of us need help. I have a teacher and I have other places that I go to work on myself and to work through my issues. And you can also always benefit from having a mentor and a spiritual teacher. Thunderwizard.com, you can go there to see the apprenticeship options, and that is one of the things. Basically, what I'm here to do is to help you get a healthy sense of self so that you can take action and get the life that you want. That is my job. My job as a shaman, as a teacher, as a counselor, is to help you get the life that you want. And if you want my personal help with that, you can go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe at whatever apprenticeship level works for you. If you want to learn the Master Shamanism course, you can subscribe at the lowest level. You get access to, hundreds and hundreds of hours of advanced shamanism courses. The next level is the Manifestation Mastery course, where you get access to the shamanism courses, plus the in-depth teachings about how to manifest. And then at the higher levels, you can work with me personally. And if you want, you can go to the even higher levels of that and really support the channel and become a producer or an executive producer, in which case I'll showcase you every time that I do a video. I'll mention your name and give people a link to whatever your services are. All right, that's it for me today. Talk to you guys later.